Welcome to GCSE RS Revision, Unit 10.4. In Part 2, we'll look at the importance for Christians of the Ten Commandments. So what are the Ten Commandments? The Ten Commandments, also known as the Decalogue, meaning 10 words, are a list of 10 laws or rules given by God to Moses in the Old Testament. To fully understand the importance of the Ten Commandments, we must understand the role of the covenant in Judaism. God had made a covenant with Moses' ancestor Abraham, promising to bless his descendants and turn them into a mighty nation, and in return Abraham and his descendants would have to be faithful to God. The Ten Commandments are the first real example of a set of concrete expectations of what faithfulness or obedience to God would mean in practice. The text of the Ten Commandments are first found in Exodus chapter 20 and again later in Deuteronomy, but they are not the only commandments found in the Bible. In fact, in the first 5 books of the Bible there are in total 613 commandments, and collectively these are referred to as the Law of Moses. More on this in the next video. But Christians today do not follow all of these 613 commandments, so that raises the question, why do they follow these particular 10? Let's look at a couple of examples of Old Testament laws that Christians don't follow. The book of Leviticus outlines in great detail what are known as the kosher laws. These were rules about what foods the people of Israel should and should not eat, and also how the food was to be prepared. However, most Christians today have no problem eating a bacon sandwich or having mayonnaise on their chicken burger, both of which would directly contradict the kosher laws. Secondly, it was part of the covenant with Abraham that the newborn baby boys must be circumcised when they were 8 days old. Yet again, most Christians today do not follow this command either. Now, in both these cases, Christians believe that there are good reasons found in the New Testament why they, as followers of Jesus, do not need to follow these certain Old Testament laws. In the case of food, Mark's Gospel records Jesus as saying, "Nothing that goes into you from the outside can really make you unclean." And the Gospel writer Mark adds his own note saying, "In saying this, Jesus declared that all foods are fit to be eaten." In the case of circumcision, as we saw in Unit 10.2, the First Church Council at Jerusalem declared that it was not obligatory for Christians to be circumcised because it had in effect been replaced by baptism. What these examples show us is that Christians view the Old Testament and the Law of Moses through the lens of the New Testament. So while they still consider the Old Testament and the Law of Moses to be from God, they understand that in the light of what Jesus taught, some parts are no longer applicable. So if Christians do not have to follow all of the Old Testament laws, then are they obliged to keep the Ten Commandments? The Catholic Church is very clear on this matter. The Council of Trent teaches that the Ten Commandments are obligatory for Christians. This statement is very clear that yes, Christians should follow the Ten Commandments. But why? The answer to that question can be found in the Gospel. If you were to read all 4 Gospels in their entirety, you would find all of the Ten Commandments mentioned a number of times, and Jesus consistently encourages his followers to adhere to them. In fact, we've already seen an example of this ourselves. In Unit 10.1, you may remember we looked at Jesus' teaching from Mark 12, where he says the most important commandments are to love God and love your neighbour. The Church says that this teaching from Jesus encapsulates the Ten Commandments. The Catechism says the Ten Commandments state what is required in the love of God and the love of neighbour. So to put it another way, when Jesus is asked what is the most important commandment, he effectively says the Ten Commandments. Just a quick side note, there is some variation about exactly what are the Ten Commandments. The list of the commandments appear twice in the Bible, in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5. In other parts of these same books, Exodus 34 and Deuteronomy 10, they refer to the list as being 10 commandments. However, the original lists have not been written with precise numbering, so there is some variation about the numbering and the order of the commandments, which may be why the exact numbering I use may be different to what you have in your textbooks or notes. As we've already mentioned in Unit 10.1, the 10 Commandments can easily be split into 2 groups. The first group of commands refer to love of God, and the second group refer to love of neighbours. Some of the commandments are fairly straightforward and as meaningful today as they were over 3,000 years ago. In this video I'll take a bit of time to explain how the first 4 commandments about love for God can be followed by Christians today. The first commandment, worship no God but me. This commandment calls Christians to acknowledge God as the one true God, creator of the heavens and earth. This is the essence of monotheism. Although Christians understand God to be revealed as Trinity, this does not undermine their belief in one God. Christians can also follow this by ensuring they do not put their trust in other powers such as superstitions or what the Catechism calls divination. This refers to things that we might call paranormal, such as astrology, mediums, horoscopes, etc. The second commandment, do not make or bow down to false idols. In the Old Testament, the temptation to worship and bow down to false idols in a religious sense was very real and a significant problem for the ancient Israelites. For Christians today, the temptation to worship idols comes in different forms. For Christians today, the temptation could be to put other things as more important in their life rather than God. These could be things like money, power, authority, popularity, fame, celebrity, prestige, or success. While many of these things may not be bad in themselves, if they become the central focus of a person's life, then this can be a form of idol worship. The third commandment, do not use my name in vain. At a basic level, this is understood to mean not to use the name of God as an expletive or negative exclamation. Some Christians interpret this to mean they shouldn't say things like oh my God, or even the acronym OMG. However, there is a deeper level to this commandment which prohibits what the church calls blasphemy, which means to speak insultingly or falsely about God. The fourth commandment, remember to keep the Sabbath day holy. Christians can follow this commandment by making a commitment to keep the day of worship as a day of rest. This may mean not working on Sundays, ensuring that they go to church on a Sunday, and making time to spend with loved ones. We move on now to the second group, which focuses on love for neighbour. As I've already said, they're fairly self-explanatory and don't need much more from me. Here are a couple of things you might need to know. The phrase to bear false witness basically means to lie, although this may not have been outlawing all lies, but particularly those spoken against other people. And also the word covet simply means to be envious or jealous of something. Thanks for watching. I've been Mr. McMillan. That's the end of part 2. Please remember to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, follow me on Twitter and download the podcast.